Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is behind the steel curtain editor, Dave Schofield, coming at you. It's Tuesday night. It's just after 9. Well, it's a little bit further after 9 than normal. Sorry about that. And where else would you rather be than here with us talking Steelers football family style? With me, as always, is my big brother, Rich. Rich, we're all waiting for it. How you doing tonight?
Breathe in that sweet smell of victory after I got to breathe it in at Heinz Field last night.
Oh man, that venue, you could just tell on TV. It was crazy. I had BF Bud messaging me before the game. He messaged me. I didn't want to message him after the game. I didn't want to mess with him there, but he messaged me this morning about everything. He was there in my seats. You got to see him. Yep. You were there in your seats. And I noticed when Ben was going around the stadium, I'm like, there's a lot of people still there. There's a lot of people still there.
Yeah, probably half the stadium stuck around through all that.
Yeah, so this is what we're going to do first. We're going to do this to start. I know some people might be coming in late. Well, guess what? We're starting slightly later. Sorry that I had some issues, some technical issues, not with the show. It was dealing with an article that I do on Wednesday mornings, dealing with Coach Tomlin's press conference and issues I was having there. Had to, call in one Jefferson Hartman to help me out. But I got that all squared away. We are ready to go. I just want you to tell me about your experience at the stadium last night.
Well, first, I got to go out there and say it was great to meet BF Bud last night. Come to find out, he went to the Cincinnati game and had gotten my tickets for my seats for the Cincinnati game, and he came back for the Cleveland game. Both times,
game.
Yep. Both times he and his wife have come into Pittsburgh. They go to the Hard Rock Cafe over in Station Square and take the Clipper over to the game. Interesting enough, back when he went to the Cincinnati game and was in the Hard Rock Cafe, people were mistaking him for Pittsburgh Dad. And he had no clue who Pittsburgh Dad was.
He sent me a message.
So the bartender had to show him a video of Pittsburgh Dad, and he was like, whatever.
I sent him a picture of Pittsburgh Dad.
So then they go back last night, and he said, it happened again. He said, all these people were coming up, oh, Pittsburgh Dad, let me buy you a drink, blah, blah. And he's like, no, not the guy, Yeah.
Well, before you go on,
Dad.
I don't want to lose this comment because Mark Davidson from Australia says, love Hard Rock Cafe. I've been there in Station Square. Yeah. So even one of the Aussies has been there as well. So, yeah. So go ahead. I messaged him. He's like, he sent me a picture of him and his wife. I'm like, dude, he does look like Pittsburgh Dad. Yeah. So that was great.
We catch a boat, head over to the stadium. Just the atmosphere, and the boat we ended up going over on was the little one. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you mean like the good ship lollipop?
Yeah, the good ship lollipop, totally open or whatever. Yeah. But that whole boat was already just buzzing. Like it was a different atmosphere. And you got over to the stadium, and it was the same way. It just felt different, sounded different. It was just interesting. I'll tell you what was more interesting than any of the other 3 games I went to at Heinz Field this year.
That's right, because you are undefeated.
Correct, undefeated
for the 2021 season. So all right,
season went to 4
games.
I
was undefeated as well. I only went to 2, but they won both of them.
Yep.
But they were also 2 of the same games you went to. So we just didn't sit together for both of them. All right, go ahead.
Anyway, compared to the other 3 games, that I went to, which was the Broncos, the Bears, and the Titans.
And the Titans game was pretty electric.
Yeah,
I don't think it came anywhere close to this.
But comparatively speaking, in each of those 3 games, I saw a lot more fans of the other teams than I saw last night in Pittsburgh for Cleveland. There were a few Cleveland fans here and there, not many. Compared to those other 3 games. The Steeler fans really held their tickets and showed up and went to see Ben, and I think that's part of what changed the entire atmosphere. I mean, it was just awesome. Then the message, what was that? 45? No, longer than that. About an hour before the game, the message for Mr. Rooney, Art Rooney II, came out on the field and did a message that went over the Jumbotron, thanking Ben for everything. And for those of you who are wondering, it was not recorded. He came out on the field and made that, because I saw someone on one of the stories on, was it a story on BTSC? No, it was on the Steel Blood of Hampton Roads Facebook page. Somebody was like, so where was the owner during Ben's last game? Blah, blah, blah. He was there. Yeah. Okay. He was there, but he was not coming. He was not being front and center, because to Dan Rooney, or to Art Rooney II, he, in what I would call typical Rooney style, that day was not about him. It was about Ben, and he just stayed in the shadows. So, but the game itself, fantastic. What's funny, I don't know how it was for you at home. Okay.
Yeah.
This was a 0 heart attack game for me.
The only time was when they cut it back to where it was still within 1 score, and they had the ball. They had the ball down 6, and I wasn't heart attacking yet because there was lots of time. And I did the knee-jerk reaction article because you were at the game, and I even said, I'm like, get some points on this drive so it's more than 1 score and I can breathe a little bit easier. I will tell you, well, I want to say a couple things. First of all, this was a little bit disappointing for me, because this was the first time since I got season tickets in 2015 that I didn't go to the last game of the season at Heinz Field. I've been to every other final game at Heinz Field of the season. I'm pretty sure there might have been one in there that I had to switch my tickets because I couldn't sell the Patriots tickets. But I've went and watched Landry Jones, with throwing touchdowns in overtime to Kobe Hamilton. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I like going to that last game. It used to be like right before New Year's or right around New Year's, kind of like this one. And I like the time of year, but I didn't do it this time because it was prime time. Yeah. And I had gone to the obviously I didn't go to any games in 2020, but in 2019, counting the preseason, because I took my daughter to a preseason game, I went to 4 games, and the earliest kickoff was the one you and I went to, which was 4:25. Every other game I went to was the 7:30 preseason game, or after 8:00 for the other 2. And man, that last one with the Buffalo game where I went with Bad, getting home at 5 a.m., I'm like, I just can't do that. It was, my son it was his first day back to school.
The Titans game was at 1:00.
No. I said in 2019.
Oh,
in 2019. In 2019. So when I planned out my games to go to this year, I was like, I want 1:00 games because I didn't have any that year. So I gave up the notion, but it was so funny because I said to myself, if I can't get rid of the tickets, if no one wants to go to that last one, I guess I'll just make arrangements and blah, blah, blah. So when BF Bud wanted the tickets, I was like, there you go. I didn't want to have to mess with primetime, but boy, I did miss being there. That would have been fantastic. Well, it was so funny because I even said to Jeff Hartman, I'm like, you want to have BehindTheSteelCurtain.com go dark for 4 hours, and you and I, take the hour-and-a-half trip down the road to Baltimore for the very last game? I'm like, I'd rather leave what happened last night on TV being Heinz Field. I'd rather have that be my experience more than ruin it by having to go to that disgusting place. That, and there's. I'm telling you, it's 80. It's supposed to rain all day on Sunday. It's supposed to rain all day on Sunday. So that's going to be yucky to deal with the Steelers and Ravens, which we will get to eventually. But I will tell you, that game just felt different the whole time. It didn't feel like the same Steelers team. So I know what you're saying. It didn't feel like they were giving you a heart attack. It just felt different. So go ahead.
Quick little story about my tickets. I offered. I hope you're listening to this tomorrow, honey. Renee listens to the podcast the day after.
And speaking of which, happy belated birthday.
Yes. My wife let me take a friend to the game last night on her birthday.
On her birthday.
Now, just so everybody knows, which it's like I'm going to tell a story, and there was a point where she told me to hold on to these tickets, and I said, "Well, are you going to go with me?" She said, "Well, I'll go if you can't find somebody else. Don't you have somebody else you want to take?" And then I said, "My friend Tim," and she was like, "Oh, yes, take him." So, yeah. And then I took the day off of work because I got home at 10 minutes till 4 this morning, and
you're way closer than I am. So
Yeah.
I'm saying if I'd have been there and been traveling with you,
I offered these tickets to sell to Renee's coworker and her husband, who are big Steeler fans, who brought me the Centennial Classic little tab with all the pictures from Hall of Fame game because they went.
Yeah. So for those of you on podcast form, it's in Rich's background that he has a nice little thing from the Hall of Fame game where they went up to that.
Yep. And so I'd offered them to them, and she was at first she was like, "Well, it could be cold or da da da," and finally he was like, "Yeah, you're right. The weather will probably be lousy." Blah blah blah. And then a couple of days ago, he was like, "Oh, we should." He's like, "We should have looked for tickets for this game," or blah blah. And she reminded him, "We were offered tickets for this game. We turned them down."
Yeah. I know.
Boy, am I glad they turned them down.
I know exactly what you mean. It would have been. I mean, I missed that I wasn't there just because I've gone to so many last games of the season. But at the same time, knowing who was sitting in my seats, and BF Buddy even says, "Hey, I'm in lucky 17. I'm in your seat." I'm like, wonderful. Knowing who was sitting there makes all the difference in the world for me.
Sure does.
So instead, I had my new. I should have had it with me down here. My new oversized terrible towel. That's something that I've wanted for a long time. I now have a beach towel terrible towel because I'm a big dude. I need a big terrible towel, and I wave that puppy. I don't use it as a beach towel. I use it as a terrible towel.
Let me tell you this. I am suffering today with sore shoulder. Okay.
From waving?
Last night at the game, there was probably 3 times the amount of terrible towel waving of any game I've been to.
Yeah.
And my arm was sore this morning from whipping that towel around so much.
I'll be honest with you. Because I always keep an eye on my section whenever I'm watching on TV to see, oh, hey, there's my seats. That's where it would be right there. A lot of times I looked and people were standing. Were people standing a lot from that? Now I know it's different up in the upper than it is in the lower, but were people
the same in the upper
standing most of the game?
A lot of the game, a solid half of the game, not just on big plays. There were times where whole drives people were just standing up.
Yeah.
But part of that too is because it was cold.
Okay. I know we have Steelers stuff to talk about, but I'm sorry for those of you that are listening. If any of you were there that are in the live chat, make sure you say that, hey, I was there, blah, blah, blah. I just love talking about the experience of being there.
Sorry, I got to bring this up. This is my friend Tim who went with me to the game last night.
That was with you. All right.
Tim was saying his shoulder was sore last night. Yes, he was actually talking about his shoulder being sore last night. I said, you're not used to swinging that terrible towel so much. So.
Well, see, and with me, I have to look at. I still could have. I found out recently that my activities of my youth, meaning football, shot put, throwing the hammer, all those things, have ruined my shoulders. I'll never be able to throw a ball overhand ever again. I found out recently the only surgical route is a shoulder replacement, and I still wouldn't be able to throw as well. So I have to be really careful. But for that game, I don't care if I would have had to maneuver my arm around and up. I would have been waving that. I was waving the towel at home. I was waving the towel. The nice thing about home is you don't have to worry about people hitting you with the towel. And I will tell you, when people hit me with their towel at the stadium, because I'm tall, I don't care.
Yeah. So here's Russ. Russ was at the game yesterday. Russ, I wish I'd have known you were there. I would have liked to catch up with you. It's been a while. But he also said no voice. Yeah, I got out of the game and was drinking constantly until I got home. I've been drinking all day just to make sure I had enough voice to be able to do this podcast tonight. Yeah. So
now everyone's going to ask, so Rich, what were you drinking? That's going to be the next.
Cheer wine, water, coffee.
There you go. So
So
got to do this.
Wait, I got to bring another one up.
Okay.
Steelers Pittsburgh says Big Bro Scho pull his groin.
No pull, because that's found out. Terrell Edmonds is now dealing with the groin. There's got to be someone deal with the groin every week. Before we go on and talk about the specific, more the X's, the O's, everything else, I want you to talk about the experience of being in the stadium when first of all, how great was the Trey Norwood interception? Okay. Did you want Najee to? Okay, I got to back it up more.
Okay.
Because Najee's running towards your end zone.
Correct.
So he's running towards. So I'm like BF Bud. He's coming at BF Bud. He's coming at my, like, even on that sideline. I'm not down the sideline. I'm more the hash. I'm just out. I'm just outside the uprights. But it was more towards that corner. Were you thinking he's going to go down? He's going to go down. Or are you thinking get in the touchdown zone?
Tim is there with me. Tim's wanting him to get down. I had predicted when the Steelers recovered the onside kick, I said the Steelers can't just kneel on it. They got to get a first down.
Yep.
Or they have to give the ball back. I said, so they're going to run it. I said, Cleveland's going to stack the box. I said, if Najee can break a tackle or two at the line, there won't be anybody left to stop him. Mm-hmm. And on the third down play, boom, he busts through. I wanted him to score.
It's the same thing as what happened when the Steelers hosted, I think it was when they hosted the Cowboys, and they had to, and they were in field goal range. This was, oh my gosh, what was this, 5 or 6 years ago? And might not have been that long ago, but I remember Cam Hayward was injured, all that stuff. And they're like, oh, Ezekiel Elliott busted a 30-yard run. Well, the Steelers were selling out to stop them, to try to not give up the extra yard, to give anything else for a field goal. At that time, if you do that, then you're almost better letting them score, and they didn't let him score, but he just busted through and was gone. So you wanted him to score. Okay.
I wanted him to score.
I had him in my fantasy football championship. I put this in the knee-jerk reaction.
Do you know what?
Won, though. I already won by a ton before kickoff, so it didn't even matter. But I thought that was funny.
Did you hear what Najee said about that after the game?
He's like, Ben told me to get down. I'm like, nah.
he said, Ben had told me to get down, and then he kind of gave his kind of, sheepish grin and said, but I didn't.
Yeah. That was great.
My thought is that poor guy has run hard this year and has earned every yard that he has gotten. Okay. He had 188 yards last night. He had 181 yards after contact.
It seemed like it. Well, I'll be honest.
No, that's what was reported by Stan Charlie Batch after the game.
Well,
I was listening to that coming home, and that's what they.
I now understand, because there were a few times he was hitting the backfield, so that's what makes sense. Because there was times where he had holes and he had lanes.
Now I'm gonna.
He hit the right spots more than I've ever seen him do it all season.
Everybody said about the offensive line. I'm going to tell you this: the offensive line was better, but not great. Okay. Mm-hmm. The pass blocking was horrible. Okay. In the run game, they weren't so much giving Najee holes, but they were giving him creases.
Yes.
Okay. I've seen too many times this year where Najee goes to run and we've got 3 guys blocking it, and there's just a wall of guys and there's nothing to get through. Najee was able to get places where he could kind of, I'm going to say, give a little shimmy sideways and squeeze his way through kind of thing. And that's all that guy needs. That's what's awesome, is he just needs just a little glimmer of light somewhere to get through. And the line was blocking enough last night for him to have those spots, and he was hitting them.
Well, and the other thing I felt with the line, when you were watching it on TV, it felt like it's all about, what I call the point of contact. It's, who gets the push? Where is the group of bodies? Is the group of bodies at the line of scrimmage? Is the group of bodies in your backfield? Is the group of bodies downfield? Too many times for the Steelers this season, the group of bodies were 1 to 2 yards deep.
Yep.
I did not feel like last night. I don't know that they got huge push all the time. There were times that they got push, but there were other times where they did a good job of holding their ground. So if you're talking about Najee Harris hitting a crease at the line of scrimmage versus having to hit a crease 2 yards in the backfield, that's a big difference with what you can do and what the linebackers that are supposed to tackle you are going to do.
Yeah, and that was the thing. We were sometimes getting some push, but we were always holding the line.
Yeah.
And that was big. So, offensively, it was nice to see that from the running game last night. It also goes to show that when you can get 5 yards on first down, what kind of good things can happen from there.
Yeah. I had some frustrations with some things at times. We'll get to that because first I want to do a super chat and then I want to move on to finish out the experience of the night, and then I want to break down some certain things. But first we got $2 in the tip jar from our buddy Tyler W., who was there with us at the Tennessee game. He says, calling it Najee 2,000 yards next year if he stays healthy. If you say combine yards from scrimmage, I can definitely see that going at it for rushing. Not that he can't. You got to see what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to do at quarterback and at the offensive line in order for it. He's capable of it, but he's also got to have the right circumstances. So I can. Oh, sorry about that. As I knocked my mic with my hat, I can see it.
Yeah, he is sitting over 1,100 yards right now because he was only 6 yards shy of 1,000 going into the game. His first 2 rushes were each for 3 yards, put him to 1,000. So he's well up over 1,100. That's solid.
Yep.
So it's good to see.
Okay, so I wanted your thoughts on the Najee Harris scored the touchdown. I was happy to see him score because I'm like, I actually put it in the article. I said that could be. I said likely Ben Roethlisberger's, and it was likely his last play as a Steeler was a touchdown. He just didn't throw it. He, handed off.
You mean at Heinz Field? His last play at Heinz Field.
At Heinz Field. Sorry. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself with that. Then the interception. Anything particular in stadium and whatnot when the interception happened?
Well, see, Tim was so badly wanting Ben's last play to be there in victory formation, which I understood. And there was a question whether it's not going to happen. As Baker Mayfield, who, by the way, sucks.
And you know what? The last few weeks, now even Cleveland fans know that now. For the longest time, they were in denial when they thought he was so great. And now they know. Go ahead.
Yeah. When he throws the ball, the guy was, open enough that I thought it was going to be a completed pass and a first down, but it pretty much was going to end the ball game.
Because no timeouts, and it would have been in the field.
Right. Just Norwood just happened to hit him and kind of pop the ball up in the air, and it was able to snag it. I mean, it reminded me almost a little bit of the Joe Hayden play a couple weeks ago, at the Tennessee game.
Which they called it a fumble, but it didn't hit the ground. It would have been an interception either way. So yeah.
Right. This one was more of an interception. I'm not sure he had totally completed everything. And if the ball had hit the ground, they'd have probably called it incomplete. But it didn't hit the ground, so it didn't matter. And then it was like, I just started screaming, and it turned to, I was like, Ben gets his victory formation, fitting way to end that ball game.
Now, you might not have realized this. They talked about it on TV. They took the knee. Coach Tomlin tried to call a timeout to let him do it again, but everyone was on the field, and he's like, "No."
Stan Savran and Charlie Bash were talking about that in the in their show after the game. But it was, I don't. Ben would have done that, but I don't think Ben was okay without that.
Yeah, he didn't need 2 kneel downs. He was fine with 1.
Well, no, it was.
Yeah.
And what went on then after the game?
That's what we're getting to. Here we are 25 minutes in. We'll get to everything else. Tell us about everything once the game ended and the experience in stadium.
Well, first of all, there were just so many more cameras and photographers and folks there at the game, and you just watch this. And, of course, they all wear those little brown vesty things. And you see this swarm on the field, and you knew that
you get that with nationally televised games anyway, and then you throw this in, it was even
right. And so it was even more, and you knew the SBN was going to interview him, so they did that, and that happened. But then you watch that whole swarm move, and you kept looking, picking Ben out in amongst all of them, and of course they had it on the jumbotron, so you could see what was going on. And, you know, he just walks over to the sideline. He spends some time over there, and he's waving to the fans because everybody in there is chanting, you know, thank you, Ben. You know, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. And he sat on the bench for a minute. And then he got up and he kind of did that little, I call it a victory lap, but really it was only about a quarter of the stadium he went around where it was easiest to reach and was high-fiving fans and just, you know, taking a moment, and then back over towards the bench and sat there for a little bit, and then eventually over towards the tunnel. And he goes over there. His kids were there, and his wife was there, and I'm guessing some other relative, some other close relatives were there. And but then to me, the cool thing was eventually it was like, okay, it's time. We're going to leave the field, and they start walking back through the tunnel, and they allowed one. I'm guessing it was a stadium or something, a cameraman, because it was on the jumbotron, to follow and walk back the tunnel with them. And so they're walking back the tunnel, and they start to turn the corner to the right, and you see the lighted hallway, which I believe is down just outside the locker room. And all you can see is the silhouette of Ben's wife, Ben. They're holding hands. I think it's one of Ben's his little girl, holding her hand, and the other two kids, and they're just walking, just this silhouette of this family walking down this tunnel. And as they're walking down the tunnel, as they got closer to the light, they just faded it out on the jumbotron, and there was probably not a dry eye in the place. It was just, it was something. Just it was something I was glad I was there to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was at home. It was, they were following and everything as well. You heard the announcement. Some people listen to the Manning cast. I stuck with the regular broadcast, but I DVR'd the Manning cast that I want to go back and listen to hopefully tomorrow, because I didn't want to get distracted from the game, thinking too much about what they were saying, if you know what I mean, because to me, they're the entertainment, not as much as the football is. So that's why
they're great to watch when it's a game that's not the Steelers. Yeah, when it's a game that you're not totally feeling you have to be into. So
yeah, but it was, just a great moment. You could see so many people were there. So historic, you're going to remember it. And it's just, it really is sad. I was depressed going into the game, man. I was getting sad. I was like, is this the last time? Is this really, at Heinz Field? And it's, what I've always experienced. The first touchdown I ever saw of Ben Roethlisberger in person was in 2004 on December 26th against the Baltimore Ravens. It was to Plexico Burress, which helped them defeat the Baltimore Ravens and win the AFC North and the number 1 seed, because they went 15-1 that season. The last one I saw was a quarterback sneak against Tennessee. So now you also got to see, the one, and that was kind of nice going back to Deontay after he had a couple drops. So now let's actually break down the game, because the Steelers got another game to play. So now we need to take away the emotion, take away everything else, and let's look at how the Steelers played, what they did, what they can do for next week, and all that. So here we are, 30 minutes into the show. Let's double check the title here. But I'm sorry, we just had to talk about that experience. It was just too much.
Oh, yeah.
And I was going to title the show like that, but it kind of seemed that the Steelers hangover that went earlier tonight was talking a little bit more about the end of an era and stuff like that. So I didn't want to go with that title. I wanted to talk about the game itself, about the Steelers. They got it done the Steelers way. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of people were like, the Steelers got away from the Steelers way recently. What the Pittsburgh Steelers are known for are this. And that's not what's been working for the Steelers. But that's what worked last night. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
What would that be?
The running game was there,
Mm-hmm.
and the defense was fantastic.
There you go. And it's so funny because everyone's talking about everything with, Stefanski blew it. He didn't run Chubb enough, everything else. I'm going to say yes and no. Other than the one really big run that Chubb had on his second carry, Robert Spillane set the tone of this game. When on Nick Chubb's first carry, he got it. He came through and blew him up for a 2-yard loss.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the only time Chubb went for a loss. Coach Tomlin was talking about this, and I mentioned this on the today's press conference recap podcast that they put him behind the chains, which meant they couldn't do what they normally do. And it wasn't just penalties or things, and it wasn't just this. They just had so many negative plays against the Browns on first down. They would try to run on first down, and the Steelers would throw them for a loss. Boom.
And there was something else that the Steelers were doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. It was almost like last night, the Steelers took a page out of what do they call him? The dirty pile of laundry in the corner, the mumbling dirty pile of laundry in the corner. Coach from up north.
Oh yeah.
They took a page out of his book. I think the Steelers were making a conscious decision last night that Nick Chubb was not going to beat them. Okay. Yeah. And the reason I say that is this: you had Spillane in there basically looking and trying to do him up and knock down the running. Okay. Yeah. Anytime it looked like it was going to be a passing situation,
he was out.
No, he was not.
Well, they tried to get him out a lot of times.
They tried to get him out. Okay. But put it this way, the Steelers had a plan for the running backs for Cleveland, all of them in the running game as well. Do you know what that was?
And that was
Marcus Allen.
Yeah. See,
Marcus Allen was matched up. The Steelers played more man last night than I'd seen them play in a while.
Yes.
And Marcus Allen was almost always locked up one-on-one with the running back.
Yeah. And then they were using UG3 at the end there. He was doing all right. But what it is, like, I was looking, I'm doing the PFF grade articles for tomorrow's because they're a day later because the game was a day later. Spillane had an out of this world run defense grade. One of the better ones I've seen all season for anybody. Now he just had a above average grade because his coverage grade was low. Like that.
Well, I love your line.
First, Spillane, give us Spillane, take it away.
I loved your line in there because Tim and I talked about it at the game. It's like Spillane has blown it up on the run, but he's costing us in the pass.
Notice what they try to do. If the Browns, especially early, like their Baker Mayfield's first completion out of his first 11 passes, his only completion was a 20-yard gain because they went quickly. So much so that the cameras almost didn't get it. They went quickly because they wanted to keep the Steelers in the defense they were in, because to then try to exploit Spillane, and they did.
And they did.
So the Steelers were trying to keep them from being able to do that. But Robert Spillane, he had an 88.6 run defense grade. Wow, there was someone else who was really close behind him.
I'm going to guess it was Alex Highsmith.
Yes, it was 86.7. Alex Highsmith, because he was another guy blowing up stuff.
That guy played out of his mind.
And he got 2 sacks. And he's the guy that's supposed to get the sacks. He's supposed to stop the run, and he still got
Tim was upset at the second one.
Because the only reason Watt didn't get it is because Highsmith beat him to it.
Yep.
That's exactly what I said. But I will tell you this.
Because Tim says, here he comes. And I said, nope, too late.
At first, they did not give the Baker Mayfield slide to TJ Watt. Like when I was looking at the play-by-play, they put a name in there first. I knew it was a sack because he didn't gain anything. I'm like, I wonder who got it. I wonder who got it.
He was. They didn't call it a loss, but it was.
If you don't gain yards when the quarterback drops back to pass,
right,
and he keeps the ball and does not gain yardage, it is a sack, even if it's for no gain.
But that was when they probably lost a football length.
Yeah,
they still called it 2nd and 10 or whatever it was, but he he technically slid down behind the line.
Yes. But you really know the truth?
What?
I don't think TJ Watt was the closest guy there. I think they gave it to him because of everything else. The guy they first gave it to, at least on Yahoo, was because that's where I check in. I'm like, oh, who got that? Because they're usually the fastest of who has it up. Originally, they had Minkah Fitzpatrick because he was right there too.
Yeah, but here's the reason I think it deserved to go at Watt. Okay,
he's the reason he slid.
Yes, Baker Mayfield saw TJ Watt and slid.
Yeah. He caused the slide. He really did. So that's why it makes sense. If not, TJ Watt was going to get a sack.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. I don't, with that one, but man, 4 sacks, 21 and a half. Okay.
Hold on. I gotta put up there, Marky. Technically, no, Mark. Technically, no. Technically, he only needs 1.5.
1.5. He needs 1.5. So if he only gets 1.5 against Baltimore, I hope he gets the half first. You know what I'm saying? I don't want him to break. If he breaks the record, I don't want him to break it with a half. Honestly,
I don't care.
Up to it, I don't think they give it to anybody else. I think they just award it to him.
As bogus as the sack was that set that record now.
Yes, that was bogus.
I don't care.
I don't care. So, So that was some of the defense. Spillane. Coach Tomlin said today, he was asked a question like, hey, your inside linebackers, your 2 starters weren't there. You had other guys filling in. What do you think about their play and the success that they had with stopping the run game? Coach Tomlin said it perfectly. And he said this. I have it written down right here. Hold on. He said this. He's like, they filled in nice, but it started up front. He gave credit to the defensive front to say.
Well, of course, Cameron Hayward played a typical Cameron Hayward game.
He had the highest PFF grade of anyone on the Steelers.
Do you know who else was playing really well?
Who's that? Montravis Adams?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was obvious that he was playing well.
And he's never going to grade as well or things like that because you know why? It's called the unsung hero. He had a good pass rush grade. They didn't give him a great run defense grade, but your job as a nose tackle in run defense is to absorb blocks. And I really don't think, I'm talking about PFF grades. There are so many things that they just don't get.
And he
doesn't get.
He held the pocket.
Yeah.
Some of those sacks were coming because Baker Mayfield had no place to step up into.
He's making Baker Mayfield throw away a screen pass because he's over defending the running back.
Yeah, it's like he was playing very well last night. Certain folks just really jumped out at Tim and I while we're watching the game.
And it was interesting.
For me, he was one that I thought was playing really well. I was happy to see him back and playing last night, and I ended up being correct.
Yeah.
And being happy to see him back.
Yeah. Coach Tomlin was asked today because, he was asked about, Akello Witherspoon and him taking so long to get acclimated. Coach Tomlin gave a really good answer. He's like, he got on the moving train. There was a lot for him to learn, a lot for him to pick up. And he got there when he got there, but he says he wasn't getting the hat because he doesn't play special teams. And we needed our reserve corners to be gunners on the punt team.
Right.
So he needed someone. Joe Hayden going down is what gave Witherspoon the opportunity to show what he can do. And he was more of the insurance policy anyway, in case someone went down. And you run it not only did it take that, it took that to get him a helmet. And then it took James Pierre not having the best of time. And Witherspoon he grabbed that. And James Pierre's now an afterthought. It's all about Witherspoon. But they say it took him a long time. Montravis Adams had 3 practices, and he's the starter at nose tackle. Coach Tomlin said he plays the A gap. There's not much to do there except play the A gap. you don't have a lot to get acclimated to. All right,
correct.
Play the A gap. So you're either on this side of the center or on this side of the center. Go wreak havoc. So I thought that was pretty good. So the defense and. There at the end. That last drive where they went down and scored a touchdown.
Okay, that never happened.
Yeah.
Okay, here's why I gripe about both of those pass interference calls.
Okay,
the entire game, both sides
We're doing much
the
worse.
the officials were letting physical play go on in the secondary.
Yeah.
Especially on the first call they made against the Steelers on the fourth down play was the most tackiest call you could have made. And after everything they were letting go on, you make that call. And yes, everybody around us was yelling the same thing. That ball wasn't catchable.
It wasn't catchable.
It was interfered with.
Yeah, it wasn't catchable. And I mean, Joe Hayden, they're like, well, technically, if you want to say he did so, but not based on what they've been calling all game.
Not correct.
And the same with the Cam Sutton one. If they were, if you're going to allow, because you allow that to happen all game, and you're going to allow the offensive player to come and run in and box out the defender, they were allowing the defender to hold his ground. And the Cam Sutton one, they didn't allow him to do that. He was supposed to just give the ground. On that one, and that was ridiculous.
Yep.
But the thing is,
and another thing for that one, that ball wasn't thrown to the person Sutton was guarding. It was thrown to the person.
Well, the guy caught it out of bounds behind him. I couldn't tell which one it was thrown to. I mean, you could have made an argument either way.
Seeing it from where we were in the stadium. Now it was far in, but it was right straight down our line.
Yeah.
The assumption was it was going to the back guy. You didn't even notice that front guy.
And what was crazy is that on third down and long, Baker Mayfield runs and gets it to be like maybe around a 4th and 5, but there was a holding penalty. And I'm like, they're just going to decline this and make it 4th and 5. I'm like, you know what? I don't know if it was 5. I'm making it up. It was less than 10.
No, it was 5.
No, that was a different drive. I'm talking about a different drive.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about this decision. I'm like, they're taking them back 10 yards and giving them another play. I'm like, bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it plays out, But I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, if you think they're close enough that they'll go for it on 4th, or you could send them way back, send them way back. And he did. And then the stadium's wrong. That was after Renegade, that was right after Renegade, and send them back. Then the false start. Then I think they gained like 2 yards on a pass. And then, they're punting out of their end zone, and the Steelers get the ball in their own territory after Renegade. Once again, it works. So that was pretty. I'm like, you really had to think that one through and to accept that penalty.
What's funny was I said right away when Mayfield scrambles and gets up there, I saw the flag. I knew it was a hold, and I said, everybody around was like, oh, they were just like, oh, it won't matter. I said, no, take it. They're like, what? I said, if we don't take it, they're going for it.
Yeah.
On 4th down. But if we take it and can hold them on 3rd down again better, they'll punt.
Yeah, exactly. And it worked out great. And it's so funny because they played Renegade before that. And they had played Renegade at commercial breaks a couple of times. I kept saying they played a Renegade at a commercial break, and it worked out well for the Steelers. And because they were setting it up all night that they were going to feature it. They came back when Renegade was being played, and I'm like, did they come back early? Because this is the middle of Renegade. They showed a tape delay, and on TV they showed how much it was rocking in the middle of Renegade, and then they cut to when the play was going to start. So they actually tried to show it on TV.
Also, they messed it up in the stadium.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
Well, why? Because they did it before the kickoff?
No,
you have to do it when there's a commercial break. Is that end of story?
Okay. The commercial break started. Mm-hmm. They started into something else at the stadium. They had other music and stuff on the video board, and then they cut it, went to the picture of the stadium, and faded it.
Uh-huh.
That's why, and they ended up having to things were rushed with Renegade at the end for starting the next play.
Gotcha.
The music was still going as they're up on the line because it got started late.
Yeah. And I know some people were saying about, Renegade, if you haven't been in Heinz Field, you really, well, first of all, you can't really have an opinion because you just don't get it. You have to experience it in the stadium to understand what it's really all about.
The volume of the noise is what is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
What it was, so that was done on the kickoff, and that noise level held through that series.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Coach Tomlin. They were, saying, wow, he's like, said that was the most electric Heinz Field crowd he's seen in a regular season game. And I thought that was an electric crowd when I was there when they beat the Patriots with the Joe Hayden interception. But let's get back to a couple other things with the game. So you have to admit, Ben Roethlisberger did what he needed to do, managed some stuff. Only 123 passing yards on a ton of attempts.
Yeah.
So it's not like Ben went out and torched the Browns. He went out and did what he needed to do to get the W, which is exactly what he said in his interview before on Wednesday, or was it Thursday? I'm trying to remember. I think they pushed it back a day because it was a Monday night game and everything. He's like, hey, all these other things leading up to it, you throw a touchdown. I just want to get the W. I don't care if it comes ugly. I want the W. And that's exactly he got what he asked for, in other words.
Yep.
But I'll be honest with you. I want to know if anyone at the stadium got this feeling, because there was times at home I started to get the feeling. I'm like, Najee Harris is running the ball, running the Steelers down the field. You throw in a few couple pass plays, but he's running the ball, getting them down the field.
Yes.
Then you're getting into the 10-yard line, you're getting to the 5-yard line.
And you throw it.
And you're throwing three passes.
Just no one around us could understand that. That was the
I understand it completely. I completely understand it. They were satisfied with the field goals. But it almost felt like they were trying to get Ben closer to, passing people with certain touchdown records. It's like they were trying to get the touchdowns coming from Ben too much. Because honestly, if you get down there and you run Najee Harris, just even on the first one and he gets the touchdown, then chances are it's going to open it up more the next time for Ben. So it's like Ben, I think Ben could have had another, if the first time they got down there and settled for a field goal, if they would have ran Najee Harris, let him get in the touchdown zone, I think Ben could have thrown it the next time or two. He might have had more touchdowns if they just would have done that with Harris in the first place. So, but that's kind of, hindsight is 2020. BF Bud, there he is. Loudest it was during
AKA Pittsburgh Dad.
Yeah.
2.0.
The Pittsburgh dad doppelganger. So, okay. So there was that. Also, when the Steelers in the fourth quarter, I got frustrated on two different occasions. I'm pretty sure it was two before the Najee touchdown. Najee would run it for 4 yards. Then he would run it for 3 yards or something like that. Sometimes it might have been, bottom line is it's 3rd and 3. And in both occasions, they passed it incomplete and punted. Or kicked the field goal.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember which one was which. I think it might have been one field goal, one punt. I'm not 100% sure. It might have even been 2 field goals. I think because of the way the offense has been all season, they just assume that 3rd and 3 can't be a running play. And honestly, I'd have been fine with them running Najee Harris, and if he gets it, great, and if he doesn't, oh well. Yeah. Even at 3rd and 3. And I was kind of getting a little bit frustrated. I'm like, you've got to do it. That doesn't work all the time for the Steelers. We know their run game's really struggled. But last night, that's what you needed to do. And that's, Coach Tom Allakine talks about balance. Balance isn't running equal pass plays and equal run plays. It's the ability to do both. Okay, it's the ability to run either one. They weren't overly balanced last night. They needed to be more run heavy. And what's crazy is they weren't the running team coming into this, but they sure did running a lot more than Cleveland did. Yeah. So it's not like Ben had the best performance ever. But the bottom line is,
it was funny
he did what he needed to do.
Tim and I talked as they were throwing stats up right at halftime. We were like, Ben, 20 of 33 at halftime.
Oh, that's 34, I think it was. Yeah.
I don't remember, something like that. 33 or 30, like he threw that many passes in the first half, completed 20 of them for 96 yards.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Well, think of the number of pass plays they had that went for negative yardage.
I know.
Too.
Yep.
But it's so funny because Coach Tom was asked about that, throwing the ball so much in the first half. He's like, we had the ball almost the entire first half. We ran a ton of plays. Obviously, you're going to have they still ran. It's not like they didn't run the ball at all in the first half. They did. They just ran that many plays. They did to the Browns what other teams have been doing to them all season. Yep. So real quick before we go on, because I want to talk about things going forward here. And I wanted to be I would have already be doing scores by now, but it's all right. The offensive line, couple things. Not a lot of people say about it. I don't know if it had to do with the change in coach this week. it could have or it could not have. A lot of people want to put it on the change at center because Kendrick Green was injured. I do want to mention stuff about some J.C. Hassenauer and Kendrick Green. I will say that J.C. Hassenauer played better in that game than I've seen Kendrick Green play all season, in my opinion.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that's what you're always going to get from J.C. Hassenauer, but dadgummit, that's what you got last night, and great. I think Matty P said it in here. He's like, I'm so tired of people talking about one game of J.C. Hassenauer like he's the second coming of Dermontti Dawson. No, J.C. Hassenauer was terrible last year. I mean, Jeffrey Bennett went on about it. He was terrible last year. But, man, he played a great game last night.
Yes,
but if that tells you anything, if you could have someone that plays center that was as bad as J.C. Hassenauer was last year, and he could turn around and play like that this year, it means that that's just evidence that it can happen. And you got to give Kendrick Green a chance. Doesn't mean you hate him the starting job, but I'm going to say it here. I've said it to a bunch of other people. Everyone wants to move him to guard. Okay. You know what I'm going to say? Just because I've heard it so much. Okay. Stop.
Yep.
If he's not good enough to play center, he's not good enough to play guard. Oh, well, that's where he played in college. Who gives a freaking what do you do?
No.
Okay.
He played there in college because he was the center. They lost their guard. Mm-hmm. And the backup center
couldn't play guard. Their two best linemen were both centers. And the other one's coming out this year. I can't remember. Because we talked about those Matty P after the show, you know, and that the other guy couldn't play guard, so Green could play both. So we did. But just because he played guard in college doesn't mean that he's a pro guard. Okay. And especially in the Steelers system. No, he might be a good guard in someone else's system, but not the way that the Steelers run stuff. To bring up the opposite fact, BJ Finney was a center in college. For the Steelers, he was a much better guard than center.
Yep.
Okay. It's just there's differences there. And my thing is, people want to talk about moving him to guard. If he stinks at a center, he's not magically going to be fantastic at guard. It just doesn't work that way. He's either good enough to play in the NFL or he's not. Moving him isn't going to be the answer, in my opinion. So, because he's already, you're like, all the problems you have with him as center, oh, he's not really big enough. All those problems are even worse if he's a guard. They're even worse if he's a guard. So the thing is, he needs to get it together and step up his game going into next year. I'm fine with him not playing it this week. You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see him limited in practice. So they say, oh, he didn't get enough practice in. And that way it's not that he got benched. You know what I'm saying? But to me, don't give up on the fact that he could improve. And if he doesn't, guess what? He's a backup or not even on the team. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But everyone's thinking, oh, move him to guard and blah, blah, blah. If you really look at the offensive line and what they do, he would probably be worse at guard for the Steelers. And so do you want Kendrick Green the way he's playing at center? Now, I know you're saying, well, you're taking away the calls and the responsibilities. That's all things that you can improve on in the offseason. Your knowledge and experience. I mean, he got the experience. All you got to do is improve his knowledge over the offseason. That can improve along with some other things. So that's just what it was. I also, so many people at BTSC. Go ahead.
I also want folks out there to know that, you know, the offensive line last night, it was not like in the game they were suddenly fantastic.
Yeah.
The pass blocking was still really suspect at times. And in the run game, it was not like they were parting the Red Sea for Najee to run through.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was always having these great big holes, but what he was getting was what he had been missing a lot of the season was even, you know, he wasn't getting anywhere because we weren't even giving him a little crack or a crease to run through.
Yeah.
And there were, you know, we were able to just get him a little bit of space at times last night.
And that could be subtle things that your coach worked on that week. It really could be. It could just be, I mean, so many times in coaching, it was like, you know, there are times you want to move a guy. There's times you just want his shoulder pads turned. All you got to do is turn the shoulder pads of the guy across from you, and you have an opening. You know, it all depends on what you're trying to do, your different philosophies.
Yep.
So that's interesting. Also, on the message board at Behind the Steel Curtain, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, there was a lot of people saying, oh, Joe Haig came in and saved everything when Trey Turner was so terrible. I then had to bring up, okay, If you look at the Steelers, once again, I'm going PFF grades, but this just helps to go. But this also goes by my eye test. You know who the number one offensive grade was for PFF? It was actually Derek Watt. He only played 5 snaps, but my goodness, he carried the ball, and boy, did he lead through those holes when they gave him an opportunity. He had the highest grade. Only 0.2 behind him, Trey Turner, graded higher than Najee Harris. Trey Turner had an 85.9 run blocking grade. It put him in the top 15 of all offensive linemen for week 17. Joe Haig was at the very bottom of the grades. Okay, so there. Now, something else I wanted to bring up about this, because there was only 2 people lower than Joe Haig on the offense for the Steelers when it came to grades. One was Ben Roethlisberger was the lowest, but we understood that. The other was Dan Moore Jr. Once again, they have Dan Moore Jr. because he's going up against Myles Garrett. They give him terrible grades. Last time he went up against Myles Garrett, they gave him a pass block grade of 0.0, which I called lazy. I'm like, he did not. You're telling me he couldn't have done anything worse when Myles Garrett didn't do much. Myles Garrett didn't do anything in this game either. He had 2 quarterback hits and 1 tackle. That was it. He had a better pass grade.
Myles who?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And they're like, oh, well, PFF doesn't take into account the quality of your opponent. They don't. Or so they say they don't. Because Dan Moore Jr. had a 45.7 score. But here's what's terrible. Listen to this score. How about a 50.9 score? Do you know who had a 50.9? The friggin' right tackle for the Cleveland Browns, James Hudson, who gave up 4 sacks to TJ Watt and a sack to Derek Tuska. And you're telling me he's grading higher than Dan Moore Jr. that kept Myles Garrett off of the sack tally sheet when Ben Roethlisberger threw the ball how many friggin' times?
It just makes no sense.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, that makes no sense.
Right.
So Dan Moore Jr. got a bad score, but he was what he did, and by himself a lot of the times with Myles Garrett and just slowing him down, getting him to take a different angle. I was really happy with what he did. Okay.
Yep.
We're way over. We're way over because we still got some things we got to talk to you about scores. We got to talk about going into stuff. Playoffs. Not out of reach. Playoffs. Yeah. All that matters for the Pittsburgh Steelers is what, like Coach Tom says, we're focused on purple. Go into Baltimore and win. They've dropped 5 straight games. Now, they've been in those games. And yes, the Steelers have not won a road game since they were in Cleveland. But what Coach Tomlin brought up, he's like, well, we haven't played well. We've won a road game since we were in Cleveland. He's like, but part of that was the familiarity of Cleveland. Now they have familiarity with the Bengals, but that didn't help. He's like, the familiarity with Baltimore, he's hoping that going into that environment's going to help them some there. Bottom line is they have to go in and take care of business. If they show up, if the rest of the team shows up in the way that they showed up last night, then I have confidence in this team that Ben Roethlisberger will do enough to get done, even if he doesn't play great. All right. So there's that. I told someone on Twitter when they asked the question, I said, I'm going to talk about this in the show tonight. The problem is, what do the Steelers need in order to make the postseason?
Well, as we're waiting at some point after midnight last night to get back on the Clipper, to back over to Station Square, somebody yells out to everybody, looks like we're all Jaguar fans this week.
You need the Jags to beat the Colts. Then you need there to not be a tie on Sunday Night Football.
To which then
if there's a tie, there's going to be a big investigation into throwing that game. Yeah. So I don't think that's going to happen. So
then I spoke up. I didn't yell it as loud as this guy, but I still said it kind of loud. I said, it's kind of tough when you're in Pittsburgh and you got to root for a team with Jag in it.
Yeah. We're all Jags.
He cracked up. He thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. So you need the Jaguars to beat the Colts. Now it's in Jacksonville. So that's one thing. Here's what's interesting. Okay. Now, not all of these games, although the quote of Jacksonville was quote unquote the home team. I know there was at least one of these games that was in London. At least one. Last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they had the number 1 pick overall because they only won 1 game. You know who they beat?
The Colts.
They beat the Colts in Jacksonville. Even when they haven't been doing too well, do you know what the Jaguars generally do?
Get a win, at least one against the Colts.
They beat the Colts in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
or at least when Jacksonville's the home team. You know, the last time, now remember, they're the same division, so they play every year in Jacksonville, or where Jacksonville's the home team. Do you know when the last time was the Jacksonville Jaguars lost to the Colts in Jacksonville?
When was that, Dave?
That would have been in 2014. No joke. The Jaguars have beaten the Colts in Jacksonville 6 straight games. 6 straight years. Well, meaning where they're the home team, but not necessarily in Jacksonville. The last time the Colts beat the Jaguars, it was when Andrew Luck was throwing touchdown passes to Ahmad Bradshaw and Kobe Fleener. It was when Blake Bortles was throwing touchdowns to Alan Hearns and Cecil Shorts with extra points kicked by Josh Scobie. That's the last time the Colts have beaten the Jaguars in Jacksonville. So now, does that really mean anything? It might mean that they just have a bit of a problem there. Are the Colts still 15-point favorites? Yes, they are. But if there's ever a team that just kind of has the other team's number and they have to knock him out of the playoffs, that's what I'm saying. Geez, that there's a chance.
Sure.
That's why that's why some people are like, oh, well, should you not play Ben and let that be his last game? Should you not? No. Should you rest? You play to win the game. You got to do everything on your way. You got to
go win.
So anything can happen.
Go win and let the cards fall where they may.
Yes. So we are way over our time. I'm going to get scolded by one Brian Anthony Davis, but we have to do our scores. We have to do it. So remember, don't put them in the live chat yet, because Rich is going to do it. We talked almost primarily about last night's game because it happened last night. We're so close to the game that just happened. So on the Steelers preview, we'll definitely talk more about the Ravens and everything. I'll get a chance to do that. You won't get to. It'll be interesting. But Rich, give us your score so that way we can open it up to everybody else to give their score.
All right. I see this one. The weather's not supposed to be great in Baltimore. I see this being a lot of defense in this game, but I also see it as the opportunity that the Steelers grab on that momentum that they got this past week and hopefully go with it. I'm going to call a low-scoring game, Steelers 17, Ravens 12.
17-12. See, I went low scoring with last night's game. I said 16-15. I was really close, and then they scored. It was 19-14 there is what you thought it was going to be, but it worked out pretty well otherwise. So here we go. We're going to bring up scores. We're going to read through these fast. I actually have a voice to do it this week. We're going to look at your score. Of course, if you don't have a team, we know you mean Steelers. This is probably the last time we get to do this year, unless Pittsburgh takes care of business, which I think is more likely. But you never know if Jacksonville's going to take care of things. So
wouldn't it be? Don't be a bunch of Jags.
Don't be the Jags. Okay, so we got Brian Brown. Okay, he says 22-17 Steelers. Steel Dog 88. 19-16 Steelers win. George Teston, Steelers 23-16. Matt B, 27-16. That's Steelers. BF Bud, 16-13 Steelers. Steelers Pittsburgh says 19-18. More sacks. That's the thing. Want to see this TJ Watt sacks. Okay. Andrew Wilbar, 18, or Steelers 18, Ravens 7. And he's like, 18 seasons for number 7.
There you go. Nice.
I see what you're doing.
There you go.
Okay. I love this one. I'm bringing it up. Matt Stufko, Jacksonville 28, Colts 27.
Nice.
Love it.
Matt, love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Rob Thytoff, maybe? I don't know. I hope I got that right, Rob. 15-7 Steelers with Boz having 5 field goals. Woo, 5 for the Boz. Boz knocked them through last night like nothing. 50-48. 50 right down the middle. Didn't matter. Okay. Sean H. Steelers 17, Ravens 13. Jags just got as long as they win. Whatever he said there. Okay. Reginald Rivers, 19-16 Steelers. Kathy Forrid, 24-10 Steelers. Christopher 11, 1916 Steelers. That's a common one. Look for terrible towels in Jacksonville stands on Sundays. I had someone ask me that on Twitter. I'm like, I don't know, man. I'd rather stay home and watch Ben Roethlisberger's final game. But they said, well, you can stream it in the stands while you're there. I'm like, if the tickets are cheap, sure. And it's probably nice weather. Maybe do that. Maybe you might see Steelers fans there. Okay. Kelvin Colbert Sr., 23-17 Steelers. George OTJ, 27-16 Steelers. Dusk Thunder, 13-10 Steelers. Oh, sorry, Dusk Thunder 9. Sorry.
There you go.
I thought I got Steel Dog 88 before, but I can't remember.
I don't know.
Steelers 24-17. G's NSOM 24-10. Steelers defense comes up big again. I can see that. There's Tim, who was there with me last night.
Timmy
16-13 Steelers. Okay. Terry Glover, Steelers 20-15. X Eddie B, 0-28 halftime, 29-28 Steelers final. But the Steelers going to go for 2 like Wang Harbs did, but they actually get it.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yep.
Yeah, Richard Adamson said punters are going to have a field day, 18-15. We didn't even talk about the punter. We couldn't talk about it.
Another time.
Yeah. Russ says, I'm going to the Ravens game too. Steelers 28, Ravens 17. Wow. I
go represent, Russ.
Go represent. Go represent. Okay. Outside Steelers fan said, good guys 20, Ratbird 16. Defense picks off Jackson and final drive to win. If he can even play.
Jackson.
He went back. He went back for a practice last week. They said he was hobbling and limping so bad. They're like, the reporters are like, this is just sad. So it's going to take an awful lot to see if that happens. Josh Parker, Steelers 19, Ratbirds 10. Maddie P, 26-16 Steelers. Jennifer Presser, sure, 13-10 Steelers. Occam's Ox, who I never got the name right until he spelled it out for me. 13-10, typical Steelers Ravens game. Boz at the buzzer. That's the thing. I think the Steelers have the second best kicker in the NFL, and unfortunately, the best kickers in the same, not even the same conference, but the same division. Okay. The CUDA 70 from the city of Ketchup, Steelers 28, Ratbird 16. No one you know, 22-16 for Ben's true last ride. Never Ender, 24-21 Steelers. Maddie P says more likely Jacksonville 10, Colts 6. Oh man, Jacksonville gave up 50 to New England. My goodness. Tyler W, 28-21 Steelers. Going with the traditional one. I like it. Mark Tobin, 25-14 Steelers. Well, actually, he said Steelers 25-14, but I can read things backwards. Brian Blackstock, Stillers, 23-19, TJ 2 sacks. Let's go. Okay. Timothy James O'Connell, 27-20 Steelers, 31-27 Jaguars. I'd love it. I'm not banking on that. I'm not banking on the Jags winning. That would just be like, oh my goodness, this is the most amazing thing ever. I'm already have it set in my mind. The Steelers need to do what they need to do. I'm not counting on the Jaguars. I'm not going to be disappointed by them. Watch them keep it close and then break my heart. Clarence Washington says Steelers 24-17. Watt's going to have 3 sacks. Okay. Felicia Ballard. Hey, Felicia. 14-10 Steelers. Mark keeps throwing it out there with an LOL. Still need that high draft pick. I'm looking. Russ has Jags 31, Colts 21. Lots of predictions there with people. Chargers Raiders 0-0. Come on, Mark D. Hold on,
you said that equals that I'm a Bungles fan.
Oh, that's what. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Joshua Shields 23-16 Steelers. Okay. Steel Dog 88 says apparently there are 2 of us. LOL. That's funny. Devin Logan, there's one. Steelers 27-14.
You missed this one.
I missed one? Oh, okay. Michael Hathaway says Steelers 21-14 with Ray Lewis in attendance. I don't know about Ray Lewis. I think Suggs is like they've been doing like a throwback player of the game. I think it's Suggs. Ron Chess has Steelers 23-17. I think that's everybody. Okay. No, Elvis Ruiz, Steelers 26-24 winners. Wow. I'm going to get in trouble for bad because of the length of this podcast. I'm really sorry about that. But hey, make sure you're tuning in to Behind the Steel Curtain with all our family of podcasts. We should be back on schedule now for the rest of the week. Make sure you're checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Rich, any closing thoughts here for us?
Hey, wrapping up end of the 2021 regular season. Yeah, us against the Ratbirds. Guess what? Can't wait.